Hello, Garland Nixon here. And of all of the geopolitical games that the neocons are playing, Israel appears to be the one that's going to take them down. Let's talk. Good morning, Garland here. And I got a few minutes on my hands, so I thought I'd have a chat with my dear friends. I see Sean and Lucas Brown and lots of people starting to hang out. So let's talk. um, the neocons, as the Washington elite, the ruling elite, or a particular faction of the ruling elite in the U.S., have embarked on a number of absurdities as far as their foreign policy here over over the course of history, but particularly over the last 20 years, the so-called war on terror. And as the war on terror shifted from the war on terror to the war on, I call it the war on modernity, right? The war on a changing world, the war on reality, because reality, I'll put it like this. When I say, and this is important, I guess I better start with this. The war on terror, so-called, was really the a move to once and for all take total control of the lifeblood of industry worldwide, which was oil. That's what the so-called war on terror was. If you remember, in the so-called war on terror, General Wesley Clark went to the Pentagon and reported that there were 7 countries that the neocons planned on taking, and they were like Syria, Libya, Iran. Now you may notice something about all of these. Iraq. Basically, I'll put it like this: almost all of them were heavy oil producing countries, or bordering a very important strategic shipping lanes, such as the Red Sea, right? So their plans were, we're going to take these huge oil countries and we're going to control the shipping lanes because you get Iran, right? You got the Red Sea, you got the Straits of Hormuz. The Persian Gulf, the Straits of Hormuz, right? So their plan was, we're going to control the oil of the world. That's what the war on terror was about. Controlling the Middle East, controlling the oil, which is the lifeblood of industry worldwide, right? Because, and here's the foundation of that. The Wolfowitz Doctrine, I believe it was 2001, and it's not an accident, 2001. The Wolfowitz Doctrine, Paul Wolfowitz comes out, and it basically says, we're going to rule the world forever. I'm just going to sum it up, right? We're going to rule the world, and anyone who tries to rise up or begins to rise, any competing world power, will knock them down. We cannot allow that to happen. Well, the easiest way to do that, if you look at the alignment, when the Wolfowitz Doctrine comes out in 2001, and it's like, hey, guess what? We need to control the world. We need to rule the world. We need to rule everything, and nobody else can rule the world but us, right? That was post 1991 fall of the Soviet Union. That was 10 years later. That was the empire saying, look, it's been 10 years since we had a peer competitor, and we got to rule. We enjoyed ruling it all for 10 years. Let's make sure we rule everything forever. That was their perspective. Now, there are those who argue that they never quite achieved hegemony, but that's a whole nother discussion. Okay, not an accident. 2001, and I'm getting to Israel, so don't think I forgot the subject. 2001, Paul Wolfowitz, 2001, whatever it was, Wolfowitz, hey, we got to rule the world forever. And 2003, the war on terror. Conveniently, 9/11 happens. Boy, what a convenient thing, isn't it? Just the thing they needed. The people that said, we need a new Pearl Harbor. And bingo, they got a new Pearl Harbor. Isn't it interesting how just the universe works? Just the neocons ask for something and it just appears out of the blue, certainly. But at any rate, so they got what they wanted somehow. And suddenly, they say, well, as a result of this terrorist attack, which just we had nothing to do with, it just happened. We really didn't want it to happen. But now that it's happened, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and attack everybody in the freaking Middle East. We'll call it the war on terror. And it will just happen to be that we'll get the commercial shipping lanes where oil moves, and we will also get the oil for ourselves. We'll control the commercial shipping lane through the Red Sea to the Suez Canal, where all of the Asian cargo, all the Chinese and all the other cargo goes. So we'll control that. And so we'll have Europe under thumb. We'll have Asia under thumb. We'll have the oil. Everybody's under thumb. Very, very convenient. But that was actually the plan. The war on terror was really about taking the Middle East and the oil supply once and for all and controlling the lifeblood of the world. And therefore, as per the Wolfowitz Doctrine in 2001, no one can rise without our permission. Nobody can rise any higher than we want them to rise, because we'll just cut their oil off. If they had been successful, think about this. If they had been successful, and at the time, remember, that would have kept Russia down too. Russia has that oil, so they could have continued to plunder Russia, because that's what they were trying to do at that time. If that had happened, they really would have had complete control for quite a long time, because as long as they could keep that oil. What they didn't count on, though, was the Islamic and Middle Eastern civilization, who, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the Palestinians, but they tend not to just bend over and allow you to have your way with their region. You could try that, but it would be a very, very costly occupation. Let's just say that if the neocons thought they were going to occupy the Muslim nations, the Middle Eastern nations, without and they weren't going to get the living crap knocked out of them. They had something coming, but that's a lesson they needed to learn. Okay, so their plan: we're going to control the oil. Well, that didn't work so well. They couldn't get a grip on the oil, and the people that really screwed them was Russia. Right, when they came in to take Syria, which was a principal part. I mean, it didn't work, period. But when they went to take Syria, Russia came in, stepped on their toes in Syria, screwed them up. Now they're pissed, because not only are they not controlling the Middle East, controlling the axis of resistance so that Israel can do whatever it wants, and Fort Israel, the empire's military base, is not controlling everything. So the bottom line is they're in a fix now. Russia's gotten in the way, and they're pissed at Russia, and they don't own everything in the Middle East. So at some point they decide, well, look, Russia has gotten in the way. I don't think it's incidental or accidental that Russia was the ones that got in their way in Syria. Russia started growing. Russia has a lot of oil, and they want to control the lifeblood of the world, of industry, which is oil. And they then set their marks and their crosshairs on Russia. And okay, that's the new plan. So the new plan is, if we can't get the lifeblood of the world, of industry, through taking the Middle East completely, we'll take Russia out. Russia's got a lot of oil, and Russia supports a lot of these and has good relations with a lot of countries in the Middle East. Russia has a lot of oil. Russia can control the price of the oil. So we take Russia, right? Think about this. Russia's huge. What are they? Somewhere, US, Russia, Saudi Arabia are the three, depending on which year, are the top producers of oil in the world. So they're going to take out Russia. And so there'll be two. The neocons will now have two of the three. A lot of this is about oil. We'll now have the US and Russia. All that oil, we can control the price of oil, and we can begin to control the lifeblood of industry. So it's still about hegemony. But now it shifts from, we're going to directly take the Middle East, to, we're going to take a roundabout way through Russia to get Middle East. We'll control the oil one way or the other. If we can't control the Middle East directly and take those countries, we'll take Russia, control their oil, and we'll use that to be able to manipulate the price and be able to deal with all of these countries that Russia formerly had good relations with. We'll just say, hey, screw them. We control Russia now. You got to do what we say. So it's a devious and evil plot, but it would be effective had there been any reason and logic to it, which there wasn't. So now, now in the background of all of this, China's rising fast. Iran's rising fast. They look at Venezuela, potential for fast rise. Oh, we got problems. So now they get basically it kind of the crosshairs um, of the neocons of the U.S. empire shifts from we're just going to take out Russia to the Middle East to we're just going to take out Russia to, oh my gosh, we got another fire over here in China. We got to deal with them. And then they started saying, but we can deal with all of it. We can deal with Russia. We can deal with China. We can deal with the Middle East, right? So now the world, it starts becoming more obvious. The entire world is growing, is rising in areas that the U.S. empire cannot control. And they're starting to lose control. And now it becomes a war not with Russia, not with the Middle East, with modernity, with a changing world. We've got to stop these South American countries from getting independent. Oh, we got to go into Africa. China and Russia are in Africa. We got to say, Africa, don't do business with Russia and China. We got to go to all over Asia. We got to start building alliances with Asia so we can control the shipping lanes for China. And we can do to China what we did to Russia. We can use Taiwan as an instrument to bludgeon China with. And those poor bastards in Taiwan are so stupid, they're going to walk right into this one. They can't even see what happened to Ukraine. God forbid. I don't know what's happened to the people of China. I've never seen in Taiwan. I've never seen such suicidal people in my life. Geez, you see some guy literally just pick this guy up and cut his throat. And you're like, hey, I think I'm going to side with this guy. He's a pretty good guy. He won't cut my throat, even though everybody else that he's laid hands on, he has slaughtered and murdered them without mercy. I'm sure he won't do that to me. That's what Taiwan's. I mean, I hate to say this. If Taiwan gets blown to hell, and if they literally vote to get blown to hell, if they're like, yeah, the United States is going to stand up for us, and Taiwan ends up flat, black, and crispy, you got to say, in a way, they kind of ask for it. You know what I mean? I mean, we're all sitting here saying, you idiots. Don't you see what's happening in Ukraine? Don't you see what's happening in Israel? Don't you understand what it's like to be an ally of the United States? Don't you see what's happening to Europe? Look at Germany. They're allies of the U.S. blew the hell out of them. They're allies of the United States. Taiwan, what part of this ain't sinking in? You got to look at Taiwan and say, at some point, God knows I love the people of Taiwan. I don't think anything happened to them. But at some point, if somebody walks right off a freaking cliff, it was just their time to go. You know what I mean? It's natural selection. Is that a term? Right? Where it's like, hey, guys, don't eat those berries. They're poison. Yeah, but they're bright red and beautiful. Please don't eat those berries. Look, watch this. And some animal walks up, eats the berry, and drops dead. And you're like, did you see that animal eat that berry and drop dead? It's poison. Don't eat it. And they're like, it's pretty and red. I think this berry will be fine. And they swallow it. Blech. It was their time to go. The universe just decided berries was their way up to the great beyond, right? So God knows I love the people of Taiwan. I never want to see anything terrible happen to them. But if they aligned with the United States, berries was just their way out of the gene pool. I don't want to see him leave the gene pool. I want to see him stay in the gene pool. But if they think that Victoria Nuland and Tony Blinken are going to rescue them from the evil Chinese, and they've got to align with the Chinese so they can get their independence, even though the Chinese say to them over and over, if you try to get in, we ain't going to screw with you. But if you try to get independence, we'll kill you. And the U.S. says, you guys really need independence. And the Taiwan's like, yeah, they're our friends. They told us we need independence. These are our buddies. They're looking out for us. You've got a country of 1.5 billion people saying to you, whatever you do, don't try to go independent or we'll have to kill you. And you got the U.S., the sponsor of Ukraine and Israel, saying, hey, probably a good idea to go independent right now. Disregard the fact that those guys said they'd kill you if you do. We got your back. And the people of Taiwan would really take a bite of that apple. Well, it's a poison apple. And if they want to bite, I think we know how that story ends. Let us pray for the people of Taiwan that they make the right choice. If they make the wrong choice, hey, you're a little island and the United States wants to use you as like a battleground between the two nuclear powers. It don't take Socrates to deduce the outcome of that conflict, people of Taiwan. So you might just want to consider that. If you don't, berries. That's your exit from the gene pool. We'll put it to you like that, metaphorically speaking. Okay. So I digress. So the neocons, meanwhile, have now decided, not really, the life in the world decided for them that their quest to control the lifeblood oil of industry worldwide has flopped. So now they're like, here's what we're going to do. China and Russia. First, we'll take out Russia. Not working so well. Then we'll take out China. Man, not working so well either, but at least that's their plan. Okay. So that's it. We're going to take out Russia and China. We'll take out the big boys, and then everybody else will find us. We'll follow. It's kind of like the guy that goes to prison and he says, I'm going to pick the biggest, baddest dude in there and I'm going to fight him. And even if I lose, at least people will know I'll fight the biggest, baddest dude. And nobody will mess with me, right? So they're going to fight the biggest, baddest dudes on the block. They start with Russia, and it don't work well at all. And they're exposed. Their weaknesses, every weakness they have is exposed. And most of the world says, we don't like you, we like Russia. And the only thing they got is Europe, and Europe's turning into as Trump referred to, an S-hole country, right? The continent of Europe is being impoverished, which of course is a bonus for the neocons. Okay. So let's talk about Israel and why Israel is their suicide pill, right? Because amongst all of this, you're fighting. I put it like this. There have been many leaders that have said, I'm going to go to war. And first we're going to take over, whatever. First we're going to take over France. Then we're going to take over Italy. Then we'll take over Spain. Then we're going to take over Poland. Then we're going to take over England, right? So they take over maybe France or Poland, blah, blah, blah. They march into Spain, and the leader leads his cavalry. He leads the charge with his sword out, and he catches a spear in the chest. Oh, and boom, he's down. And his quest ended after the third country because he didn't make it, right? So the neocons now have determined we're going to go here, Russia, China, we got this, South America, Africa. And they're just playing the chessboard, and they're just, we're going to defeat this person, terrorism over here, blowing up a road over here. Oh, we got all kinds of fun things. Well, we're going to fly some missions along the South China Sea, the Black Sea, the Baltic Sea, you name it. Oh boy, they're just absolutely having a blast. And then the Palestinians, again, let's get back to those pesky Muslims. They ain't much for being occupied. the Islam, the civilization of Islam, ain't much for turning the other cheek. They ain't much for saying, it's kind of, remember what Malcolm X said. Nonviolence only works. Was it Malcolm X or was it Kwame Ture? One of them said, I think it might have been Kwame Ture, who said, nonviolence only works if your adversary has a conscience, right? And I think the Islamic civilization very much understands that. And they're like, look, you punch me. I used to teach force continuum, right? And the actual way you teach it is the theory behind it. The philosophy is if somebody hits you with a chicken feather, you can hit them with a turkey feather, right? Well, in Islam, it's like, if you touch me, I'm gonna put you in a cemetery. If you put a finger on me, as Malcolm X said, love people, guard your life, be nice to everybody, kind, gentlemanly, take care of your family, work hard, live in a clean fashion. But if somebody puts their hands on you, put them in a cemetery. And, guard your life with everything you have to go. Everything you have, but if you got to go, take 4 or 5 of your adversaries with you, right? And that's kind of, and he was what? Nation of Islam. That's hey, I don't want no trouble, man. I'm trying to take care of my family, live right, do all the things in accordance with my beliefs, right? But don't touch me, and don't try to take my land, because you're gonna have a problem. So while the neocons are, Russia, we got them. Oh, China, got to get them next. Oh, look over here. There's something going on in South America. Let's go do a terrorism act here. We'll overthrow the government of Peru. Oh. And the Palestinians were like, meanwhile, we'll be over here punching a hole below the waterline of your ship. So the Palestinians, a ragtag group with what? With bad attitude. What the Palestinians have is a bad attitude. They've been kicked and smacked around for a long time, and their position is, as Snoop Dogg would say, it's time for some get backs, right? So the Palestinians set up October 7th. And when the neocons were looking at Russia and China and Venezuela and Cuba and, oh, we're going to take everybody out. Oh, isn't this wonderful? We're impoverishing and deindustrializing Europe. Those poor schmucks are buying right into it. Oh, Taiwan, we're setting them up for, a complete and total destruction. They're Ukraine 2.0. They're looking over here and the Palestinians, bam! They took a baseball bat to the pumpkin heads of the neocons while the neocons were not looking in the other direction. I mean, they ran up behind them when they were looking in the other way and smacked them with a baseball bat and knocked their asses silly. Now, what it did was it exposed the Achilles heel, the soft underbelly of the empire. Right. And I'll go back to, you might have heard me talk about this before. This was the US's Dien Bien Phu moment. Right. And if you look up the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, if you could call it a battle, that's how the French got kicked the hell out of Vietnam. What happened? The French decided in their ultimate wisdom, this is hubris. This is the imperial hubris. Right. And some of you might know the story. Forgive me if you do. So the French decide, here's what we're going to do. We're going to show those little old Asians who's boss. We're going to go way out in the middle of enemy territory, way out there. And we're going to build a fort at a place called Dien Bien Phu. Big, giant fort, thousands and thousands of soldiers, right? In the middle of enemy territory. And we're going to, and from that fort, we'll launch attacks. We'll come back, we'll hang out. But the main thing is, it's a PR victory. It's an intimidation. It's a show of force to demonstrate to them that we can put this thing right in the middle of your territory and ain't a damn thing you can do about it. Okay. So it's going to be a show of force. This is the perfect analogy for Israel. So they build this fort out in the middle of nowhere. And of course, the Vietnamese can't stop them. Build this fort in the middle of nowhere. And they built a fort. Who would think this would be a military mistake in a valley with a bunch of mountains around them? Because why? Because these inferior, poor little yellow people, why? They aren't smart enough. They don't have the technology any way to get artillery or big guns or anything like that on this hills pointing down. Just can't do it. So we'll do this. We'll show them who's boss. Well, unfortunately for the French, maybe fortunately for the Vietnamese resistance, they didn't have technology. What they did have was a hell of a lot of people. So they take like 10, 20,000 people and literally tie ropes to an artillery piece and drag it up on the hill by hand, drag it up on the hill around Dien Bien Phu. 212 artillery pieces they put around. So down in this valley, you got a French fort, military outpost. Similar to, like, just say maybe Israel in the Middle East, right? In enmity with everybody around them. And little did they know they were surrounded by bit, month by month, week by week, artillery piece after artillery piece got dragged up into the mountains around them. And on a given morning, when the green flare went up, as Scott Ritter likes to say, and somebody yelled charge, they opened up on them with artillery. And they turned the fort, the military outpost of Dien Bien Phu, into a graveyard for the French. And the French quickly put up a white flag, gave up, and got the bloody living hell out of Vietnam, right? And that's hubris. I can build this military outpost in the midst of these people that I'm trying to defeat or intimidate, and there's nothing they can do about it. That's what Israel is. That's what Israel is. I'm going to put this military outpost in the middle of the Middle East, right here out there in the midst of all the oil, and there's nothing that the Muslim people can do about it. And no point in resisting. You got no chance. Okay. So let's put all these things together. The U.S. does the war on terror. In other words, we're going to take over the lifeblood of oil in the Middle East. And as that's flopping and not working out so well, and Russia's getting in the way, they notice that Russia and China are rising. So now we got to go to Eastern Europe. We got to overthrow Ukraine. We got to take Russia down. And we got to start with our plan, building up our military assets in the Pacific, so we can then intimidate, encircle, and strangle out China and control all the shipping lanes. And oh boy, this is going to be fun. We got a plan. Maybe not a good one, but a plan. So while that's happening, and while they're distracted over there, the Palestinians let me say this: I don't think it was planned to coordinate with the other things, but that's just the way the universe works. That's just the way the world works. That's just the way things work. The Palestinians take out the old baseball bat, whap, right upside the head of the neocons on October 7th. Now, where this is the big problem, there's a couple of places, but we'll go through and then we'll get to the big problem for the neocons. Number one, their money number one, at a time when the United States is cash strapped, to say the least, to say the most, it's loaded with debt and going broke. So they do this, and it's very expensive. The U.S. decides to send all of these ships. They've got their military outposts. The U.S. can't and won't give up their military outposts in the Middle East or try to do anything that would bring this situation to a peaceful resolution, because that would mean that they would have to acknowledge that they don't control the Middle East, and they still have machinations to control the Middle East. So this is you got to do this from the perspective of the imperialist and the neocons. You got to at least, if you can't completely control the oil, you have to at minimum have yourself a gigantic military base out there, namely Israel, so that you can have great influence over the region and intimidation. They use the word deterrence. They mean intimidation in the region. And that intimidation took a beating when the Palestinians bopped them upside the head, and there was nothing they could do about it. A bunch of guys with small arms just whooped their behind, head up, went face to face with them, outthought them, outsmarted them, outstrategized them, and then went face to face with them and wiped a lot of them out with machine gun fire, face to face, head to head, man, mano a mano, and punched them right in the friggin' nose. And with no fear, was not afraid of them, was not afraid to die, wasn't afraid of anything. Went straight at them, punched them in the face, and just demonstrated their weaknesses. So now the U.S. empire is in a real fix, because it's been trying to bogart China, and China ain't going to be bogarted. But now the money and the assets and the attention that was in the Indo-Pacific, a lot of that has to be peeled away and put in the Middle East. Now the money that's going to Ukraine to try to sacrifice the lives and bodies of the Ukrainians for the next 10 generations, because there ain't going to be nobody to build the next one generation. They don't have the money to do that anymore, because they got to prioritize things. And their first priority is, if we lose complete and total intimidation, the power for intimidation in the Middle East, we're screwed, because that's the lifeblood of the oil. And from their perspective, China and Russia are going to control it, and they are right. But the difference is, China and Russia aren't trying to control it in a coercive manner. Russia and China will control it, here's what I'm saying, in a cooperative manner. So Russia and China won't say to the UAE and Saudi, Russia won't say to the UAE and Saudi Arabia, you got to do what we want. Russia and China will say to the UAE and Saudi Arabia, look, you got oil, we got oil. We can all work together to keep a good price for oil. We can all get paid. We can all eat. And Saudi Arabia and UAE, et cetera, will say to Russia, yeah, let's all eat. Russia and China is going to be like, we ain't trying to overthrow your government. We're not trying to put in a government that is going to benefit us. We're just going to give you a good deal economically, and we'll all work together. So Russia and China is going to move into the Middle East, is moving into the Middle East, has moved into the Middle East, has a long history in the Middle East, particularly Russia, of good relations. And economically speaking, they have not historically used coercion, and neither has China. The U.S. tries to say to Africa, tries to say to the Middle East, Russia and China is going to use coercion, but the people of those regions have a historical context through which to evaluate that assertion. And they're going to evaluate that assertion and say, you and your cohorts in Europe have historically been extremely brutal and coercive against us. And you always screwed us and took everything we had. Russia and China never has. So why should we trust you that they're going to do what you've always done? I think we'll trust them to continue to do what they're doing, which is they're trying to get a good deal. They're trying to eat. We're going to sit down, right? If I'm sitting down and I'm working on a business deal with you, me and you are trying to get a business deal, I know I'm going to try to get the best make the most I can, and you're going to try to make the most you can, and we're going to work together. But I got to look at it also and say, you got to stay in business. I can't get a business deal that's so lopsided that it runs you out of business. Now I can't work with you anymore. So Russia and China are smart enough to know, if I do a business deal with this country, I got to make sure at least they get enough out of it so they stay in business and they prosper and they'll stay in the deal. They won't walk away from the deal. So they have some level of business sense, some level of a view of mutuality. It's like this. It's like this. They understand the goose and the golden egg principle, right? I had some training in business, the goose and golden egg principle. That is, if you have a goose that's laying golden eggs, take good care of the goose. That's what, but I would say that's what Russia and China, that's kind of how they do foreign policy, which is, if we have a country and that country is going to make us a lot of money and is going to help us with resources, help us keep the price of commodities we're selling, do all these things good for us, we got to keep that country healthy. We got to keep that goose healthy because we're getting golden eggs from it. The United States will take the goose and beat the bloody hell out of it and cut the goose's throat and then wonder why they're running out of golden eggs, right? So bottom line, these countries are like, we've got a right to choose who we want. Okay. So all that, when you look at the Middle East, the U.S. wants to use coercion in the Middle East to keep Russia and China out. They get punched, the living crap punched out of them by the Palestinians. And now let's get to Israel's a suicide pill. And now we're in a situation where the worst possible thing for an empire is arising. What is that? In theory, it can be a powerful adversary, but you can go to war and survive a war idea, possibly, most likely. I mean, in nuclear confrontation, most likely not, but it's theoretically possible for the U.S. to go to war and survive that war with anybody, and maybe lose a lot of people who God only knows what, but it's theoretically possible for the neocons, the ruling elite class, right? Now, what is the tremendous fear of fascists, of neocons, but I repeat myself, of these kinds of people? What is their biggest fear? It's always the same thing, of empire. What's the big fear of empire? Internal uprising. See, they know that rot starts from the inside. They know internal uprising. Let me tell you something about that. Let me tell you a perfect example of something they're doing to try to deal with internal uprising. Keep an eye on this. Think about this. Recently, Dick Durbin has said, here's what we need to do. We need to bring in undocumented immigrants and put them in the military and say, if you serve whatever, 4 years, 5 years, whatever time is in the military, then you can become a U.S. citizen. So we bring in people who are from another country, don't really have any connection to this country, right? And we put them in the military. Why? Why? First of all, we're having we're running short of people because Americans are like, oh, the hell with this, man. I don't want to join the military. For God's sake, it's that, some people, their issue is the wokeness. Other people, their issue is foreign policy. Other issue, people have a lot of issues with the military now, particularly young people with the government. They're unhappy with the government. They don't feel like they're going to join the military and protect their homeland, and they're unhappy. So put this together. Let's put these things together. The ruling elite maintain a fear of internal uprising. Let's put all these things together. Israel is creating a dynamic where internal uprising is rapidly growing, right? People are like pissed. That's why I say it's the suicide pill, because it's not the exterior thing they fear. They love exterior turmoil and chaos. They can make more money doing that. Their biggest fear is internal uprising. That's why all the censorship, all this kind of stuff, right? So what happens? Oh, darn. We can't get any people to join the military. Why? Again, that's part of an internal uprising. That's part of people saying, I'm unhappy with the system, the institutions. I don't trust that the military is there for our own good, which it ain't anymore. And not maybe, who knows, maybe never was. Okay. So you're now concerned that the people could push back, could rise up, could protest. They're like, Israel's caused more protests than we've seen in a long time. All kinds of people have protested, right? You got conservatives and libertarians. You got Jewish people, religious people. A lot of these protests are led by Jewish people, right? You've got the Muslim community, all the young people, all of these groups are coming up, pushing back, saying, this is bullcrap, man. We don't like what you're doing in Israel. We want peace there. Civilians being killed is unacceptable. And the ruling elite is afraid of internal uprising. So what happens? Look, historically speaking, one of the ways, if you think of the St. Petersburg, right, Leningrad, if you think of the revolution, the Russian Revolution, what happens? And what happens time and again? A friend of mine was in Poland, I believe. He saw this happen. What happens oftentimes in history when a government falls? The government says to the army, okay, protect us, our government buildings from the people. So you got the government people in here in this building. You've got a phalanx of their guards and all of their, they Praetorian Guard, right? You got the military here. You got the people on the outside protesting. We want food, bread, and things like that. Jobs, usually. And finally, the government says, we've had enough, go home. And the people say, nope, not going. No, we ain't going home. We're hungry anyway. We got no food there. And the government looks at the military and says to the people, go home or we're going to tell these people to open fire. And the people say, we got no food anyway. What are you going to do? Kill us? We ain't going nowhere. And the government says to the military, open fire on those bastards. Shoot them all. And the military looks. And they look out in the crowd and they see their aunts and their brothers and their sisters, the people that they work with, the people that they grew up with, the people they know. And they suddenly begin to realize, these are my people, not you, you ornery bastards. And they throw their guns down, or they say simply to the ruling elite, no. At that point, the government has lost all legitimacy and falls. Why? Because the ultimate legitimacy of a government is a monopoly of force, right? The ultimate power of a government is they can arrest you, they can take your liberty, they can kill you, they can do whatever they want. If it all comes down to it, they can send the police to your house and grab you. It's a monopoly of force. That's what makes the government ultimately have power. And when the government says to the military, fire on those protesters, and the military says, I will not do it, it's over for the government, right? That's history. We've seen it happen time and time again. Okay, let me get back to what I'm saying. Our government says, hey, we're going to bring undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants in, and undocumented immigrants, and put them right in the military. Now, this is not an attack on immigrants whatsoever. I understand the United States has destabilized their countries, bombed their countries, destabilized their regions, and our imperialist foreign policy shows up on our border in the form of these immigrants. We destabilize their country. They are victims of U.S. imperialism. They're victims of the U.S. empire in the same way that the people inside this border are victims of the U.S. empire who spend all of our debt. Think about this. They take the money that we pay in taxes, or they print money and throw us in debt, and they go destabilize that country. So we're suffering because it's our money and they won't spend it on us. And then they go destabilize that country. The immigrants are suffering because their country's destabilized. They show up at our border. And then we get mad at the immigrants, not the people who destabilize our country and theirs. But I continue. This is important. It's critical to understand this. So what happens eventually is they get these immigrants, and they say, if you get in the army, then you can become a citizen. So now you have an army loaded with people who have no connection to the everyday man and woman, right? Remember what I said. When the government says to their guards, their military, open fire on the protesters, the people in the military look at there and they see the eyes of little children that they grew up with, that look like them, that worship like them, that think like them, that have the same culture as them. They look out and they say, open fire. And they look out, oh, there's Uncle Bobby. Oh, there's little Timmy. There's somebody that looks like Uncle Bobby and little Timmy. There's an innocent little girl sitting there waving a flag, and she looks like she's from my hometown. Oh my God, she has a flag that says, I'm from Schenectady, and I'm from Schenectady. We can't open fire on there. And the soldiers throw their arms down, the government falls, right? Unless you got an army full of undocumented immigrants. And not just undocumented immigrants. Here's my point. An army full of people from some remote location that doesn't have any connection to that crowd of protesters. See, right now, if you say to the army, go beat up a bunch of protesters, there's the danger that the army will say, I'm from Georgia, and you're telling me to beat up a bunch of people from Georgia. That the Army may say, I have a connection, because they do. If the Army's smart, they'll realize we came from the poor, oftentimes the poor, the working poor. Not even, a lot of times the military didn't come from the working class. They came from the poor, more times than not, and the working poor, right? And you're going to tell them to take out the protesters, who are people who are suffering, who are usually going to be the poor and the working poor. And they're going to look out there and see a mirror. They're going to see themselves. So they may very well say, no, we ain't going to do it. But if you bring in a bunch of people who have no cultural, ethnic, national connection to those protesters, now you say, all right, you're here and you got to do what we say for 5 years in order to get your citizenship. Yes, I do. Fire on the protesters. It's not that they're guaranteed. I'm not saying that, somehow this is not an anti-immigrant rant to say, oh, the immigrants are going to, mow us all down, because as I said, the immigrants are as big a victims as we are. We need to wake up and realize that it's our foreign policy showing up at our door, not some bad guys as they want us to believe. But my point being this: the ruling elite ain't stupid. And they realize that if they give the order to machine gun the protesters and the military says no, they fall from power. They fall from grace. They fall from their perch in the heavens, right? And they also realize that if they have an army loaded with people that don't have an ethnic or cultural or a natural identity that aligns with the people in the crowd, I'm not saying they will machine gun them, but it becomes more likely. The last thing you want, Americans don't know, and people don't know, you should be fighting against this. The last thing you want is for the government to control an armed force that has no cultural, no ethnic, no national connection to the protesters, to the people in the street. And when they say, we got a bunch of people who are protesting Palestine and we'll put you in a bunch of armored personnel carriers, they're blocking the roads, right? Mash on the gas and run over and kill them all. Not saying that an army full of immigrants would do it. I'm saying they are more likely to do it than the people who look out into that crowd of protesters and see their brethren in from one fashion or another. It's often been said that one of the reasons there have been, I'll put it to you like this: in the United States, there's been historically a lot of black people in the military, simply because there was a lot of black poverty, and it was a way for a lot of people to get out of poverty, get out of the South where there was heavy racism, things like that. I have heard, I remember grandparents and people in that when I was a kid talking about when they were younger in the 40s or 50s or whatever time, 30s, saying a lot of black folks, you're in Georgia somewhere where people get lynched and all kinds of terrible things happen, and you're never going to get a chance to do anything but work on a farm. You join the military and you can see the world, unfortunately, empire, but you can go elsewhere and you can get out there. You can get an education. You can learn things. You can get an opportunity that you wouldn't normally have, right? You got a job. Okay. And you have health care and all these things that it's just out of desperation. So there was always discussion that the United States had considered, there's instances where the U.S. considered sending the military into black community, because black communities in the 60s were rising up saying, hey, this ain't fair. We're living in an apartheid area and we can't handle this and we're going to fight back, right? Not that they were right. It was apartheid. And so there was a fear in the military. This was well documented. There was a fear in the government, and the fear in the government is we got a lot of black people in the military, and there was a lot of Puerto Ricans too, right? And the fear was, if we tell the blacks and the Puerto Rican soldiers to go into these black and Puerto Rican neighborhoods in these cities and to beat the people down and put them in line, that they're going to be like, hey, no, that's my cousin Bill over there. That's my cousin Pedro over there. Ain't happening, right? There was the fear. They understood that there's a certain ethnic, cultural, national identity that will affect your ability to command the military to abuse and or kill the people. They understand that. If you don't, that's why I say one of the things that's going on now is we got to get the ruling elite, this military, just plain old white and black folks in America is running around here, and they ain't going to be so thrilled when we tell them to beat the hell out of the white and black folks on the street, because that's their family. If we can get a military of people who aren't American and who maybe don't even speak the language, then they won't have that cultural connection. They won't have that national, ethnic, any kind of connection to the people in the street. And not saying they will commit atrocities against the American people, but they're more likely to. And trust me, if you've been paying attention to the unthinkable actions going on in Gaza, then you will clearly understand that the ruling elite in America have no qualms about committing atrocities against their own people. They have no qualms. Men, women, children, babies, slaughter them like they don't even exist, right? The bottom line is, if they will do that, if you have the kind of conscience that will allow you to slaughter men, women, and children, you ain't going to discriminate about what kind. Black, Chinese, American, Northeastern, ones in Boise, Idaho, Miami. You don't give a damn. If you are a sociopath or a psychopath, you'll take lives. You don't care whose they are. Think about it. You're in the chat right now, right? If somebody said, hey, I want you to go kill a bunch of children, it wouldn't matter who it was. Hey, I'm going to take you to a Native American a ranch, and I want you to kill all the children. You'd be like, hey, I'm killing a bunch of kids. Well, get out of here. Okay, fair enough. Let's go to this community in Chinatown and kill all the kids. You'd be like, hey, get out of here. No, hell no. All right. We'll go to a black community. No, your principles are going to be, I'm not killing children. That's not what I do. No. But think about the kind of people. If you can do it anywhere, you can do it everywhere. And if you can mercilessly slaughter seniors, men, women, and children with no remorse, you are a psychopath. And if you're a psychopath, psychopaths kill their own kids. Haven't we seen, remember the lady Susan Smith or whatever, the infamous story here in the United States where this lady, she had a boyfriend, her kids were in the way of her relationship. She drives into the lake with both kids, drowns the kids, and then says some black guy did it, right? Why is that, right? She didn't give a crap. With her, it wasn't even racism. It wasn't as, hey, I hate black people, and so I blame it on the black guy. With her, it was just like, all right, the kids are in the way, they're gone. Done. Woo, got that out of the way. Now, I need a good story. Oh, black guy, that'll work. A black guy did it. With her, she was a psychopath. That didn't necessarily make her a racist. It just made her a psychopath. She was going to kill whoever she needed to kill and blame it on whoever she believed that the government would be most likely to believe. To her, the most believable story that she could come up with was a black guy that killed my kids. So that's what she went with. A psychopath doesn't care. They'll kill anybody. So the neocons, think about it. If they'll kill somebody else's kids, they'll kill yours without a second thought. And you along with them, and everybody who's dear to you won't even blink an eye. Won't even blink an eye. In fact, look it up, was it Operation Northwoods, I believe it was, where the U.S. CIA proposed to John F. Kennedy, hey, we got an idea. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to bomb some areas in Miami, kill Americans, and we're going to blame it on the commies. We're going to blame it on the Cubans. We're going to blame whoever, the Castro, whoever, right? So without a second thought, they were going to kill America. We're going to bomb a bunch of Americans. Your lives mean nothing to them. Zero. They just as soon kill you just to blame it on Cuba. Hey, we hate Cuba. What are you going to do? Let's kill a bunch of Americans. We'll start there. We'll blame it on Cuba. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it will not. Who cares? Let's give it a shot, right? That's how psychopathic these people are. So think about this. When they look out over the hinterlands and they say the American people are restive, the American people are unhappy, the American people are frightened and scared, they're ready to push back against us, we got to kill a lot of them. Let's get a military full of people that don't know anything about them, don't have no connection to them, and maybe we can convince those guys to machine gun and mow them down if need be. We'll get them flying helicopters. They can fly over the crowd, drop bombs on them, napalm. They can burn them, shoot them, do all kinds of things. Just kill a lot of Americans, and maybe the rest of the ones that are protesting that are still alive, maybe maimed, something like that. They'll go home and they'll say to their friends, we better stop because the government's going to kill us all, and we will. So that's why I say be very concerned, because they understand what I understand. That Israel is the suicide pill for them. Now, let me just say this. They understand that, and they understand that the suicide comes from internal uprising. They ain't scared of external things. They're scared of internal uprising. That's why all the censorship. They don't want you talking about things that may give people a notion, right? Don't be going around here talking about to our people, giving them notions, making them think things. They believe things and look into things on their own. For God's sake, we can't have that. Shut up, you're censored. You're off Twitter. You're off Facebook. You're off Google. You're off everything. Can't have that because you're talking about unapproved things that we find a threat. So we must neutralize the threat. And we are scared to bloody hell of internal uprising first and foremost. And what is Israel doing? It's putting people in the streets in fury. It's making people ask questions they haven't asked before. It's making people look at their government and say things like, well, hell, perhaps I was wrong about some of my other assumptions. I thought you were a force for the good. Damn it, you ain't a force for good. Now they're looking at an election coming up. Oh my God, what are we going to do? We can't actually have an election where people choose their own candidates, for God's sake. So now they're going to rig the hell out of the election, which of course is, that then they're setting it up this. So A, they can rig the election, and B, if you call them out for rigging the election, they can put you in jail. Oh, you're trying to influence the election after the election. Why? By saying it was rigged. Yeah, was it rigged? Well, of course it was. We rigged every election, but you're not allowed to say it because that would cause an internal uprising. So therefore, you must be censored. You can't even say that an election was rigged after the election is over. You're not allowed to say, I don't trust the government anymore. They're going to act on you. They got to, and so now they're in a fix. And the Israeli issue, the problem is this: it has revealed who they are. They can't hide it. They're so desperate that they're like, okay, if we lose Israel, we lose the oil fields, we lose everything. Right now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to squash all opposition to Israel. No matter what it costs us, we're going to do that. And then we'll try to crack down on the American people. We might have to machine gun or mow some down, but what the hell? It's the cost of doing business, So, of course, we better get an army together full of undocumented immigrants so that they won't quite have the connection to the people. Then, should the people get a little too froggy, they'll be done, right? And again, as I said, it's not an anti-immigrant rant. It's simply a reality that the ruling elite understands the probabilities that Americans will shoot, that I'll shoot my brother, are lower than the probabilities that I'll shoot your brother, right? If I got to shoot somebody, if it's your brother, hey, Garland, shoot. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Boom. I've been trained as a Marine. Boom. I just shot your brother. Oh, your brother. Okay, Garland, now shoot your own brother. Yes, sir. Hey, that's my brother. Follow orders and shoot him. Yeah, right? They understand that dynamic. And they understand that people are infuriated over Israel. They understand that they have no choice. I say they got no choice. Based on the way they see the world, which was we got to dominate and control everything, they don't have a choice. They got to try to dominate and control everything. They don't understand the concept of a world where there's mutual benefit considered and alliances based on the benefit of both sides. They're just, we got to dominate everything. That's the way it is. And if the Muslim people get in the way, if the Russians get in the way, if the Chinese, they're all getting in the way. The Venezuelans, the Iranians, they're all getting in the way. Then they got to die. And if the American people get in the way, the German people get in the way, the British people get in the way, they got to get the same treatment. They don't think nothing of killing you. Nothing of killing you. Look at history. They don't have no concern. Let's just say this. It should be obvious they ain't real concerned about your health at this point. Right? They ain't looking out for your health. They're looking out for their money. They're looking out for their profits, their power, and their control. And if you get in the way, and that's their biggest fear, they will treat you the same way they will treat the Palestinians. The same thing they're doing to the Palestinians. Don't believe for 1 second they wouldn't do it in America, that they wouldn't do it in Germany, that they wouldn't do it in right here in their own country. If they felt that members, there was a thing a while back in Philadelphia where they called it the MOVE people, this group, right? It was like a dozen, 15, 20 people, maybe 40. And they had they ended up finding one old rusty handgun. And they were like, yes, they were a threat. It was like some kind of a black freedom movement, something like, right? They all named themselves like Africa, something or others. But they weren't really doing much of anything in any conscience. It was like a dozen or two of them. It wasn't that many people. They weren't armed. Government came in and bombed like 6 city blocks, burnt it, bombed. in Philadelphia, burnt down blocks, right? Threw satchel charges at them, burnt down blocks and blocks, killed all these people, destroyed all of this stuff. So you think for like a couple dozen people who were unarmed and they just were unhappy with what how the U.S. was treating black folks or something, right? So you think for 1 second the U.S. government wouldn't bomb for a dozen or two people that bomb and burn down 6 city blocks? If you think if a huge group of Americans came together and had a rally and said we're tired of the way we're treating, you think they wouldn't bomb a city and they wouldn't do what they're doing to Gaza? If you're naive, if you don't think they do it, you are very naive. And that they're not putting together the machinations they need. So in the event that they get uprisings, they're going to be ready to deal with them. That's the plan, I think. And Israel is the suicide pill because Israel is Israel. This conflict is the one that exposed them to the American people. You see, this is the conflict that is the true suicide pill because their great fear is internal uprising and being exposed to the American people generates a dynamic in which internal uprising could and one could argue likely will occur. So now the American people, look, I told the story, I do a show every Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. on WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C. And maybe you haven't heard the story before. If you have, bear with me. It's brief. A guy called in September and said, Garland, I'm still mad at you because of Hillary. You wouldn't support Hillary. You helped Trump get in, blah, blah, blah. You all know the story. And I'm like, look, I'm an independent. I don't have to vote for anybody. And I sure as hell wouldn't vote for Hillary. I didn't vote for Trump. I'm an independent. I'm a third party guy. I'm unhappy with the system. He's pissed. You help Trump. People like you are doing this. We all know the rhetoric, right? About 2 or 3 weeks into the Gaza genocide, he calls in. I get a call. Hey, yeah, this is whatever his name is, Dave in Silver Spring, right? Whatever. And I'm like, all right, Dave in Silver Spring. I'm making that up. All right, Dave in Silver Spring, you're on the air. And I didn't really recognize the voice. He says, Garland, I'm calling in to tell you I'm the guy that called about a month ago. And I said, look, I was mad at you because you wouldn't support Hillary and you didn't support the Democrats. I said, it's your fault, blah, blah, blah. I said, oh, thanks for calling, Dave. I certainly appreciate you listening to the show. I'm very appreciative, even when people don't agree with me, especially when people don't agree with me. I'm very appreciative of callers. I think it generates a great conversation, right? So he said, I called to apologize. What? He says, I was wrong. You were right. I can see. So what happened? People who are diehard Democrats, diehard, woke up one day and said, "Oh my God, I was wrong." Now I see who these people really are. You've heard me probably use the vampire analogy before, where there's a vampire. You've seen the vampire movies, and the vampire is always the beautiful woman or the handsome guy, and the very attractive to the opposite sex, right? And they're nice and beautiful and sexy and charismatic, and they hug the person, and just before they get to bite them, they transform into the true demonic looking figure, right? They're like, yes, ha, ha, ha. And then just before they get to bite the person, their hands grow and there's nasty looking nails, fangs come out. They get all evil looking. Their hair gets, I guess they must, people must run out, fluff their hair up. Their hair is all fluffy looking. Their fangs, they got the big overgrown caveman-esque looking eyebrows. And then the person goes, oh my God, but it's too late. You get bit. Bottom line is, just before they attack, you really see who they are, right? And that's what Israel has done to the United States, has exposed it. This evil, horrible, genocidal demon that looks so beautiful, that has movies, and people watch the movies, and there's beautiful people in swimming pools and Ferraris, so that people are like, I want to move to the United States. Why? Because I understand that when you turn 25 in the US, you are issued a Ferrari. You're then given a home in Beverly Hills with swimming pools and beautiful women in bikinis. I'm all for that. Get me to the United States. That fraud. And that's what people thought the United States was, this beautiful, charismatic, alluring, attractive member of the opposite sex just waiting to bring them in, right? This beautiful girl or guy or whoever it is you desire, whatever your case may be. God knows I don't want to know. But ultimately, that thing turns into the demonic beast before it bites you. Now the U.S., thanks to Israel, has been revealed as that demonic beast. And the people inside the empire are aghast at what they see. The people inside the empire can no longer deny it. At least not the ones with half a brain or a full brain. The ones with half a brain can't. But the people that are totally brainwashed, yeah, you can't help them anyway. But many, many people are waking up to say, good God, this is the US. And they're not going to be able to get that back, and they know it. And now they'll have to use more censorship and more oppression. That's the bottom line. It was, I see somebody free Assange. Exactly. See, Assange was trying to reveal the monster. Assange was saying, look, I got somebody from the inside. Here's a picture of the monster. And people are like, oh my God, that's an ugly monster. Yeah, here's another picture of the monster. People are like, oh my God. What WikiLeaks did was they put up pictures of the monster. That's what they did. This is what this monster really looks like. If Julian Assange says, I got to tell you what the monster really looks like, and I got the data to show you what it really looks like. And they're like, you cannot reveal what we really look like. He held up a mirror in front of the vampire, and people were like, oh my God, there's no reflection. I told you it was a vampire, right? In every vampire movie, I love vampire werewolf movies and zombies. In every vampire movie, right, there's always the person who's trying to tell everybody, stay away from Garland. He's really a vampire. And Garland's like, oh, come on. Don't listen to that kid. He doesn't know what he's saying. And people are like, Garland, a vampire, you idiot. There's no such thing as vampires. And I'm like, why? Because I know I'm a vampire. And the kid who's exposed me knows that I'm a vampire. And I'm like, don't listen to that kid. He's probably smoked too much weed. And then everybody leaves the room, and I look at the kid and I smile and wink at him and say, keep it up, kid. You're going to get bit in the neck next. Oh my God, Garland's threatened me. And they walk back in the room, and they're going, and he goes, Garland threatened me. And you're like, yeah, that kid's been smoking too much weed. I never threatened him. Me, vampire, no. You're right. And at some point, the kid holds up a mirror, and everybody sees me walk by a mirror, and they look, and they're like, hey, Garland just walked by that mirror, and there's no reflection. There's something wrong with the mirror. Oh my God, he really is a vampire, right? Israel has held up a mirror to the vampire. And people can look at the neocons. They can look at the U.S. empire and say, holy crap, there's no reflection. It really is what people like Garland and Nixon and Jimmy Dore and various people out here, Judge Napolitano, I can go on and on, Scott Ritter, all of these people that are saying something's wrong here. This thing's a beast. It's a monster, and it's out of control. All of a sudden, people see no reflection, and they say, oh my God, look at Israel, look at Palestine. These people really are what we were told they are. And in fact, if you look at Fright Night, in Fright Night, great vampire movie, one of the dynamics there is that when the young guy tries to tell everybody in the room, he's a vampire, he's a vampire, he's a vampire. And the vampire basically looks at him and it's like, come on, man. Leave your friends alone. We wouldn't want them to be hurt or put in any jeopardy. In other words, what he's saying is this to them is this. Okay, you're telling your friends that I'm a vampire. I know I'm a vampire. You know I'm a vampire. But if your friends actually figure it out, I'm going to kill them. I'm going to have to kill them. So maybe you'd be better off not convincing your friends that I'm a vampire. Because if you convince all of your friends that I'm a vampire, I'm going to have to kill all your friends. Is that what you want to happen? Right? So bottom line is that's where we are. It's obvious. Everybody's looked into the mirror, and the neocons now and the empire now would ideally like to put together a military that has people in it with no connection to the basic people. You'll see them try to do the same damn thing in Europe so that they can bring in a foreign army of occupation. Think about this. If I get a bunch of people from other countries and bring them in here, they're under duress because I say to them, you will do what I say or I'm sending you back to your poor country. So I've got them under duress. And you're under duress because I say you will do what I say because I got a foreign army of occupation in American uniforms in America. And if you don't do what I say, I'm going to threaten them with sending them back and tell them to machine gun you. So I'm all set now that I've done what I did in Israel. Now that you know who I am, if you call me out, I'll have to kill you. You know who I am now, America. You understand that I am the monster, that I am the vicious, brutal, and murderous, genocidal, savage beast that I am. But if you call me out for it, then I'm going to have to kill you and everybody that's dear to you. That's where we are right now. Israel has revealed this monster, and it has created a dynamic for internal uprising. And unfortunately, the neocons understand all of that just as well as I do and you do, and they're prepping for it. But I don't think it's going to help them because we're facing likely an economic collapse that's going to put a dent in a whole lot of their machinations and plans and their ability economically to maintain this empire. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks. Certainly, I'll ask you, see everything going across the bottom, PayPal, buy me a coffee, Cash App, etc. If you can afford to help this channel, I appreciate it. If you can't, just share, smash the like button, share this on all of your social media platforms. That's numero uno. Go to rockfin.com/Garland Nixon and become a member. Does not cost anything to become a member. Please become a member in case they throw me off YouTube. And if you can afford it, you can become a member on Rockfin. It's $14.99 a month to help the channel. If you can't, that's fine. Just share this on all your social media platforms. I hope you enjoyed it. I have a lot of fun. Thanks a lot. Peace. I'm out.